Imagine walking into a hospital for your very first day as a medical student. You are excited, you are nervous, you spent years studying, dreaming of helping people, but within days you notice something strange. People rarely smile, the residents are exhausted, the interns seem afraid to ask questions, the consultant can be intimidating, the nurses and doctors sometimes argue, or junior gets publicly scolded for a small mistake. But nobody seems surprised. Instead, everyone acts as if this is normal. Why? The hospitals are full of some of the smartest, most compassionate people in the society. So, why do so many hospitals around the world develop a culture that feels stressful, hierarchical, and sometimes even toxic? Is it simply because doctors have difficult personality, or is something deeper happening? And today we are going to explore the hidden psychology, the history, and science behind the hospital culture, and why good people can become part of unhealthy system without even realizing it. So, before we begin, it's important to be fair. Not every hospital is toxic. Not every senior is abusive. Many hospitals have outstanding culture built on teamwork, respect, and excellent leadership. Many consultants are inspiring teachers. Many residents go out of their way to protect junior. So this video isn't about blaming doctors or hospital. It's about understanding why unhealthy culture emerges more often in healthcare than many other professions. So researchers studying workplace culture describe the toxic environment as places where the fear replaces learning, the hierarchy surpasses the communication, the bullying becomes normalized, and the mistakes are hidden instead of discussed, and the chronic stress become the part of daily life. And unfortunately, studies from many countries, including the United States, UK, Australia, and the several Asian healthcare systems, have documented that the bullying, burnout, and the poor psychological safety among the healthcare workers. So this isn't a random problem unique to just one country. It's a global challenge. So to understand today's hospital culture, so we have to travel back hundreds of years. For much of history, the hospitals were not places where people went to get better. Before earlier, they were hospitals were places where the poor, abandoned, or dying were cared for. The medical knowledge was extremely limited. The doctors had fewer effective treatment, and there were no antibiotics, no CT scan. There were no anesthesia until the 19th century. Many surgeries were performed while the patient were fully awake, and the speed mattered more than precision because the pain was unbearable. The medicine wasn't just difficult; the medicine was brutal. And as scientific medicine advanced during the 19th and 20th century, the hospitals transformed into highly specialized institutions, and the new technology appeared: the lab, the operating rooms, the ICUs, the emergency department, the complex surgery, and the modern medicine became one of the most complicated profession the humans have ever created. And the but complexity came with the price. The mistake could now kill people the much more quickly, and that changed everything. Many people assume hierarchy exists because senior doctors enjoy the power. The reality is much more complicated. So imagine an emergency room. A patient arrives after a road traffic accident. The patient's blood pressure is falling. The airway is blocked. The heart may stop within minute. And this isn't the time for democratic discussion where everyone debates over the every decision. Someone must lead. Someone must coordinate, and someone must make rapid decision. And in emergencies, the hierarchy saves lives. The pilots use hierarchy. The military organization use hierarchy, the firefighters use hierarchy, the trauma teams use hierarchy. The clear leadership prevents the chaos, and this is the one reason hospital developed strong chain of command. The medical students learn from interns, the interns learn from resident, the residents learn from consultant, the consultant carry the ultimate responsibility. And in theory, this structure allows knowledge to pass safely from one generation to next. The hierarchy itself isn't the enemy. The problem begins when the authority becomes unquestionable. So the healthy hierarchy says, I have more experience, So let me teach you. The toxic hierarchy says, I suffered, so now you must suffer too. And that single shift changes everything. Instead of encouraging juniors, the juniors become afraid to ask. Instead of reporting mistakes, the people hide them. And instead of learning, they focus on avoiding the embarrassment. And psychologists call this lack of psychological safety. The psychological safety means the people feel safe to speak up, admit uncertainty, or report concern without fear or emulation or punishment. And research by organizational psychologists MA Advanson have shown that a team with high psychological safety report more error, not because they make more mistake, but because people feel safe enough to discuss them in the healthcare. And that's incredibly important. A hidden mistake can harm a patient, and a reported mistake become an opportunity to learn. The safest hospital aren't the ones where the errors never happen. They are the ones where the people are willing to talk about them honestly. The medical student officially teaches anatomy, physiology, the pharmacology, surgery, ethics, the the communication. But there is another curriculum that isn't written in any of the textbook. The researchers called it the hidden curriculum. The student quietly observe everything around them: how seniors treat a junior, how consultants respond to the mistakes, how nurses are respected or ignored, whether asking question is encouraged, and whether admitting uncertainty is acceptable. No one formally teaches this lesson, yet they may shape future doctor more than lecturers even do. Imagine a student repeatedly seeing a resident skip meal, work 30-hour shift, apologize for taking sick leave, hide emotional distress, and eventually those behaviors begin to feel normal. The culture isn't taught through the lectures, it is transmitted through the observation. Every generation unknowingly teaches the next. And that's one reason unhealthy culture can survive for decades, even when everyone agrees they should change. The another reason why hospital culture feels intense is because of who enters the medicine. The most doctors have spent years competing academically. Many were top students throughout their school, and they are conscientious, they are responsible, they are perfectionistic, they are hardworking, and these qualities help people become excellent physicians. But under chronic stress, those same strength can become the weakness. The perfectionism can turn into fear of failure. The responsibilities can become guilt, and the dedication can become overwork. And high standards can become the self criticism. And the medicine attracts people who care deeply about doing the right thing. And that's make the failure feel deeply personal. And because the stakes involve the real human lives, every mistake carries emotional weight. Even experienced doctor often remember a patient they lost many years ago, and the emotional burden never completely disappear. So far, we have learned something surprising. The hospital culture wasn't created because healthcare workers are bad people. Many aspects evolved for a good reason. That is the patient safety, rapid decision making, and managing the extraordinary complexity. But those same system can unintentionally create fear, silence, exhaustion, and unhealthy tradition. So, in next part of video, we will explore what happens when the sleep deprivation, burnout, bullying, emotional trauma, and the hidden curriculum collide, and why even compassionate doctor can gradually become emotionally detached without even realizing it. So imagine working for over 24 hours. You have a admitted patient, you have handled emergency, skipped meals, barely had time to drink water, and by morning you are expected to make life-changing medical decision. For many healthcare workers, this isn't a fiction. This is reality. The research have consistently shown that sleep deprivation affects the attention, memory, the reaction time, emotional regulation, and the decision making. In fact, being awake for about 70 to 19 hours impair the cognitive performance to a degree comparable with the mild alcohol intoxication. Now imagine repeating that not once but weeks after weeks. A tired doctor is not simply an energetic doctor. They are different version of the themselves. They are more irritable. They are less patient, they are more emotionally reactive, they are less able to empathize, and they are less able to think clearly under pressure. And this doesn't excuse rude behavior, but it helps to explain why it becomes more common in environment where the chronic sleep deprivation is normalized. The problem isn't that the healthcare workers don't care. The problem is that they are expected to care while operating under the condition that would challenge everyone. People often use the word burnout to mean the exhaustion, but medically and psychologically, the burnout is much broader. The researchers describe the three core features of the burnout. First, emotional exhaustion. You feel like you have nothing left to give. Even the simple tasks begin to feel overwhelming. Second is depersonalization. This is perhaps the most misunderstood part. The healthcare worker may begin distancing themselves emotionally from the patient, not because they don't care, but because caring deeply about every tragedy every day becomes psychologically overwhelming. The patient, uh, the patient gradually become the appendicitis in bed 6 instead of Mr. Sharma. So this emotional distance is often an unconscious defense mechanism, and the third is reduced sense of accomplishment. Even after helping dozens of patients, people feel they are never doing enough. There is always another ward round. There is always another emergency, another patient waiting, another mistake to worry about. The burnout doesn't happen because someone is weak. It often develops when the dedicated people work for prolonged period and in the system that continuously demand more than they can reasonably sustainably give. And every profession has a stress. The medicine has something else. The repeated exposure to suffering. One day it's a child with severe trauma. Next day it's a younger mother with postpartum hemorrhage. And then a patient with terminal cancer. Then someone who dies despite everyone's best effort. Most people experience these events rarely, but healthcare workers may experience them every week or even every day. Yet they are expected to move on immediately. There is no pause. There is no time to process grief. Another reason patient is uh, already waiting. Over time, many clinicians develop the emotional armor. It protects them from being overwhelmed, and what armor has the cost. It can also make warmth, empathy, and vulnerability harder to express. To patient, this may appear as coldness, but internally, it may be simply be the survival. One of the saddest feature of the unhealthy hospital culture is that many people who become harsh senior were once frightened junior. Think about that. The interns who is shouted at today may become the resident who shout 5 years later. Not because they planned to, but because humans naturally learn behavior by observing the authority figure. The psychologists call this social learning. If humiliation becomes normal way of feedback is given, it starts to feel like the correct way to teach. Some people even justify it by saying that it made me stronger. But research tells a different story. Fear may produce the short-term obedience, but it doesn't consistently produce the better learning. People learn the best when the expectations are high and they feel safe enough to ask questions, admit uncertainty, and seek help. The best teacher challenge the learner. The best teacher they don't humiliate them. The medicine has very little room for error. A misdiagnosis can have devastating consequences. A medication error can harm a patient. This responsibility shapes the mindset of doctor. Many become perfectionists, not out of vanity, but out of fear. The problem is that the perfection is impossible. Every doctor will eventually make mistake, and every doctor will miss a diagnosis. Every doctor will lose a patient. The healthiest culture acknowledge this reality. They investigate the mistake honestly. They improve system, and their unhealthy culture do the opposite. They focus on the blame. When people fear punishment, they become less likely to report errors, and ironically, that makes healthcare less safe. The modern patient safety research repeatedly shows that the preventing future mistake usually requires improving the system, not simply blaming the individual. And the patient often see doctors during a consultation or wire round, but what they don't see is everything is happening behind the scene. the documentation, the electronic medical record, the insurance paperwork, the discharge summaries, the teaching responsibilities, the research, the examination, the administrative meetings, the phone calls, the medical legal concerns, and the constant awareness that one overlooked detail could have serious consequences. The modern medicine demands not only clinical excellence but also the administrative efficiency. Many clinicians feels that they are spending less time with patient and more time managing the paperwork. This contributes to frustration, emotional fatigue, and the feeling that the profession is differing away from the human connection that inspired many people to enter the medicine in the first place. When we hear stories about the toxic workplaces, it is tempting to look for a villain: the rude consultant, the aggressive resident, the unsupportive administrator. But sometimes the individual do behave unprofessionally and should be held accountable. But organizational psychologists warn against assuming that difficult outcome always come from difficult people. Often systems shape the behavior. If a hospital consistently understaffs its ward, if doctors work excessive hours, if asking for help is seen as weakness, and if bullying goes unchallenged, if the emotional support is absent, then even the kind, well-intentioned people may gradually change, and this doesn't remove the personal responsibility, but it reminds us that the changing culture requires more than replacing individual. It requires changing the environment that shapes them. Hospital culture is not simply a collection of personalities. It is the product of history, psychology, organizational system, and the human biology. But here is the encouraging part. Many hospitals around the world have dramatically improved their culture. In the next part of this video, we will explore the real evidence showing how healthier leadership, psychological safety, teamwork, and the system redesign can improve not only the lives of doctors and the nurses, but also the safety of the patient. Because the goal isn't just to create a happier healthcare worker, it is to create the better healthcare for everyone. The hospital culture isn't just about whether doctor enjoy going to the work. It directly affects the patient care. For decades, the researchers assumed that the medical errors were mainly caused by the individual incompetence, but over time, a different picture emerged. Many serious medical errors occurred not because of one person lacked knowledge, but because the communication broke down. A nurse noticed something unusual but hesitated to question a senior doctor. A junior doctor recognized her concern but was afraid of looking inexperienced. Important information wasn't handed over properly during a shift change. Someone assumed another team had already taken responsibility. These aren't the dramatic Hollywood mistake. They are ordinary human failure that become dangerous inside the complex system. One of the biggest turning point came in 1999, where the U.S. Institute of Medicine published the landmark report "To Err is Human." It estimated that tens of thousands of deaths each year in American hospitals were linked to the medical error, and the report shifted attention from blaming individual to improving the system and safety culture. And since then, the healthcare organizations worldwide have increasingly focused on the teamwork, communication checklist, and the creating environment where anyone can speak up if they believe the patient is at risk. Aviation. Interestingly, that medicine borrowed one of its most important safety ideas from the aviation. Years ago, investigators studying airplane crashes noticed a recurring pattern. Sometimes the co-pilot recognized a dangerous mistake, but they stayed silent because the captain held unquestioned authority. But problem wasn't a lack of technical knowledge; it was a culture that discouraged speaking up. In response, the aviation introduced a crew resource management or CRM. The pilots were trained not only to fly the aircraft but also to communicate openly, challenge unsafe decisions, and respectfully and work as a coordinated team. Many hospitals later adopted this principle. Today, operating room and the emergency department increasingly use structured communication tool and surgical safety checklists, the pre-operative briefing and the post-operative debriefing. These practices don't eliminate the human error, but they make it much harder for a small mistake to become the tragic one. If pressure is unavoidable, why do some hospitals maintain a supportive culture while others struggle? Research suggests several consistent characteristics. The first, psychological safety. People feel uncomfortable asking questions and admitting uncertainty. Second, respectful leadership. The best leader don't lead through the fear. They set high standard while remaining approachable. Third, teamwork. The doctors, nurses, pharmacists, the paramedics, the technicians, supportive staff see themselves as one team rather than the competing group. Fourth is continuous learning. Mistakes are investigated to improve system, not simply to assign blame. Finally, staff well-being. Healthy organizations increasingly recognize that the caring for healthcare workers is not a luxury; it's an essential part of patient safety. A burnout worker cannot consistently deliver its best care. Changing hospital culture doesn't always begin with policy. Sometimes it begins with one interaction. If you are a medical student, ask yourself question. Stay curious. Don't confuse confidence with competence. If you are intern or resident, remember how vulnerable you felt on your first day. Teach junior with patience and the correct mistakes firmly when necessary, but never with humiliation. But and if you are consultant or senior clinician, your behavior shapes far more than clinical decision. It shapes the next generation of the doctor. And the student may forget what you taught, but they rarely forget how you made them feel. And if you are a nurse, pharmacist, technician, or any other healthcare professional, never underestimate your role in creating a culture of mutual respect. The excellent healthcare has never been the achievement of one profession alone. It has always been a team effort. And what patients should know? Our patients often assume that a calm, confident doctor has never experienced fear or uncertainty. But the truth is quite different. Behind every experienced clinician are years of mistakes, difficult cases, sleepless night, self-doubt, and continuous learning. Medicine is not practiced by machine; it is practiced by human beings. The human being who become tired, who carry emotional scar, who sometimes lose patience despite doing everything correctly. Understanding this doesn't mean accepting disrespect or poor care, but healthcare professionals should always strive to communicate with empathy and professionalism. But recognizing the human side of medicine can build greater trust between the patient and the people caring for them. The final message is the excellence and kindness can coexist. When people talk about the toxic hospital culture, the conversation often becomes polarized. Some blame the system, others blame the individual. The reality is far more complicated. Hospital culture is shaped by the history, by the psychology, by the workload, by the leadership, by the education, and by the behavior that each generation passes to the next. And the encouraging news is that the culture is not permanent. Just as an unhealthy habit can spread, so can healthy ones. One respectful teacher can influence hundreds of future doctors. One supportive resident can transform an intern's confidence. One leader who listens can change the entire department. Medicine will probably never become an easy profession. The responsibility is simply too great. But patient will always arrive unexpectedly. Emergencies will always happen. The difficult decision will always need to be made. But difficulty doesn't require cruelty. The high standard do not require humiliation. The authority doesn't require intimidation. And the excellence doesn't require sacrificing the compassion. And perhaps the strongest hospitals are not those where nobody makes mistake. They are the ones where people learn from the mistakes together, where asking for help is seen as the wisdom, not the weakness, where the respect flows in every direction, not just from junior to senior, but also from senior to junior, from doctor to nurse, from the nurse to doctor, ultimately from every healthcare professional to the every patient. Because at the heart of every hospital is a simple purpose, not prestige, not hierarchy, not ego, but healing. And the culture that best serves that purpose is one where the both patient and healthcare worker can thrive. Thank you for watching, and if you found this helpful, insightful, consider sharing with someone in the healthcare. The conversations like this are one small step toward building a healthier culture for everyone. Thank you, Dr. Swarnim, signing out. See you in the next video.